Today I'm going to show you how to help a child take a word that is frequently seen in text from a bit of known to automaticity. Okay, so we're going to work with the word said today. I want to think about the fact that, okay, this child has just read this word said. I have seen the child read the word said in text over and over again. But because the child knows the word said in text, in context, does not mean they know the detail of that word. So I am going to, after the child finishes the book, I will come back to this page and I will say, find that word said that you read today. So you may have to show this procedure for how to use these mask cards, but I would hopefully see the child come in and frame this word said. Yep. So then I would approve and say that is the word said. You found it. I might then do some study of that word. So I would say, let's take a good look at it. That is the word said. What letter do you see at the beginning of said? Hopefully the child says it. What letter do you see at the end of the word said? Then I might say, how many letters are in the word said? I might say, what do you see in the middle? Okay. The part that usually tricks children is this AI part. Okay. They usually want to write the word said, S-E-D. They can read it in here because it's in context. But I want them to start to notice the detail of words, to take them on and be able to use them without hesitancy in reading and writing. So I say, let's take a good look. I would say, take a look at that word said. And I would move across it slowly like this. What word is that? Said. I might even go, let's cover it up again. What word was, or what letter was at the beginning of the word said? I might say, what letter was next? What came after that? What came after that? Yep, that word is said. Then, once I feel like I've studied it enough with the child, then I'm going to take the letters for the word said and show them like this and say, what word is this? Said. Then I would say, yep, if we were going to write this word, we would write it letter by letter. Said. Then I would move it over and say, you show me how we would write it. Said. They don't need to say the letters. What's more important is that they are seeing the letters come across their vision, their line of vision, left to right. Okay. When I feel like we've studied it in that way enough, I might ask the child if they are ready. I would say, if I mix this word, could you make it? So let me do this. And we see if the child can pull it back together. If they cannot make it right, say they do this, I might say, let me show you the word up here. And I would say, check yourself. And hopefully they would notice that it does not look the same. Okay, so then after they fix it, I would say, okay, let's try again. Now let me mix it and you make it, okay? And see if they can make it in the right order. All right. Once I feel pretty certain that they could make the word quickly, we go to the next part. And I would say, do you think that you can write that word? So I can use the whiteboard for that. All right. So again, this is what we hope to see. But say they do this and they stop. I might say, here are the letters. Which letter comes next? And if they can't come up with it or they come up with the wrong one, I can give them the model again. Okay, making sure that the letters are nice and close together so they see it as a word. Make sure the letters aren't like this. They need to be able to see that those letters go together as a word. And if they need the model, then we let them use the model, and then they can continue on and write the word. Once they can write it with the model, I might say, are you ready to write it without the model, without that word, and see if they can do it? Okay, so once I see that they can securely write that word, I might say, do some activities to see how we can show them to remember that word beyond this interaction. Because what we know about brains is that they remember things in settings and spaces. Okay, so he or she might remember this word within this context, but in order to take it to other spaces, I might say, do you think you could bend down and touch your toes? This is for a child who really has a hard time remembering. And sit back up and still remember that word. Okay. I might say, can you go over to the door and back and still remember it? I might say, can you remember it at the end of our time together? Or can you remember it at the end of recess? Or I might say, tomorrow when I see you, can you show me that word? Or can you go over and write that word for your teacher? Or when you go back to Mrs. So-and-so, can you write it for them when you get back there? This piece is critical. Okay, our students need to learn how to remember sometimes, especially our struggling students. Many students don't need the extent of this, but for our struggling students, they might need to have some systems in place for how to remember. So this is the journey of SAID. Now, here are some things to remember. I might have a list of words, of 5 or 6 words that they need to learn next. I need to be very careful about not overloading the brain, okay? I don't want to teach them me and my at the same time because they look very similar together. They might need to learn one of those words really well before they can start to write the other word and know that it's different. Our students who struggle the most need specific ways to know how to learn words. And so this might look like a lot of work, but once children understand that there are some processes and that they have some ways to own that learning, we don't have to rescue them anymore. They have some ways. You might say, okay, so you wrote that word really well. How many times do you need to write it on here in order to remember it? Or I might give them a piece of paper and give them a marker and say, how many times do you want to write it on this paper to have your brain remember it? This is giving them ownership so we don't have to rescue them. This is giving them ways to know how to learn any word, not just the word SAID. So hopefully you will understand a little bit more about how to take a word that is seen in text to automaticity.